The Whispering Snowman's Secret. Once upon a time, in a sleepy little village nestled between snow-draped hills and a frozen river that sparkled like a ribbon of diamonds under the winter moon, there stood a snowman named Elias. Elias wasn't like the other snowmen in the village, those jolly fellows with carrot noses and twig arms who guarded the gardens and waved to children on their way to school. No, Elias was special. He was taller than the tallest pine, his body a perfect trio of snowballs stacked with care, and his eyes, his eyes were two shiny black pebbles that seemed to hold the secrets of the northern lights. But the most magical thing about Elias was his whisper. When the wind sighed through the evergreens, Elias would lean in close and murmur words that only the night could hear. These were no ordinary whispers. They were wishes, forgotten wishes, lost in the hustle of the holiday season, carried away on breezes that wandered the world. The village was called Whispering Pines, and every December it transformed into a wonderland of twinkling lights and the scent of cinnamon cookies baking in every hearth. Families gathered around crackling fires, telling stories of Christmases past, while sleigh bells jingled faintly in the distance, promising Santa's visit on the eve of the 25th. But not every heart in Whispering Pines was merry that winter. In a cozy cottage at the edge of the woods lived the Willow family. Mama Willow with her flower-dusted apron and kind smile, Pa Willow who carved wooden toys with hands as steady as the falling snow, little Sophie, a girl of 7 with braids like twisted vines and eyes full of stars, and baby Theo who cooed at the snowflakes dancing outside the window. They were a family bound by love, but that year a quiet shadow had fallen over their home. Papa Willow had been away for weeks, traveling to the city to sell his carvings at the grand Christmas market. Letters came like snowflakes, soft promises of home soon, but the days grew shorter, and the ache of missing him grew longer. Sophie felt it most of all. Every evening, after Mama tucked Theo into his cradle with a lullaby of rustling leaves, Sophie would bundle up in her red wool coat and woolen mittens, her boots crunching through the fresh powder to the edge of the yard. There, guarding their cottage like a silent sentinel, stood Elias. Sophie had built him herself on the first big snowfall, patting his belly round and full, wrapping a scarf of faded blue around his neck, and crowning him with Papa's old top hat which she'd found in the attic. "Keep our secret safe, Elias," she'd whispered as the sun dipped low, painting the sky in hues of lavender and rose. And Elias, with his pebble eyes twinkling, had nodded ever so slightly, as if the wind itself had carried her words into his frosty heart. One crisp evening, just 10 days before Christmas, Sophie couldn't sleep. The cottage was warm with the glow of the tree, its branches heavy with ornaments that caught the firelight like captured fireflies. But Sophie's mind was a whirlwind of worries. What if Papa's train was snowed in? What if the market was too crowded and no one bought his toys? She slipped from her bed, tiptoed past Theo's gentle snores, and pulled on her coat. The door creaked open to a world hushed in white, the moon hanging full and silver like a guardian's watch. Snowflakes twirled lazily, and the air smelled of pine and promise. Sophie trudged to Elias, her breath puffing out in little clouds. "Elias," she said, her voice small against the vast night, "I wish Papa could come home. I wish we could all be together, laughing by the fire with hot cocoa and stories. But wishes are just words, aren't they? They melt away like snow in the sun." As she spoke, a gentle breeze stirred, rustling the branches overhead. Elias' scarf fluttered, and then, soft as a sigh, came the whisper. It wasn't in Sophie's ears, but in her heart, like the echo of a forgotten song. "Wishes don't melt, little one. They wait, they wander, and sometimes they find their way back on wings of wind." Sophie blinked, her cheeks flushing pinker than the holly berries on the door. Had the snowman spoken, or was it the wind playing tricks? She pressed her mitten to Elias' cold cheek, feeling the chill seep through, but there was a warmth there too, like the flicker of a hidden candle. "If you're real," she murmured, "help me find Papa's wish. He wrote it in his last letter. I wish for a star to guide me home through the storm, but stars are too far away." The next morning, Sophie woke to the sound of Mama humming in the kitchen, the clink of spoons against mugs, and Theo's giggles as he batted at a dangling pinecone. Over porridge sprinkled with nutmeg, Sophie told Mama about the whisper. Mama smiled, her eyes crinkling like the pages of an old storybook. "Snowmen have their mysteries, Sophie. Perhaps Elias is listening to the world for us. Why don't you visit him again tonight, and take this?" She pressed a small, carved wooden star into Sophie's palm, Papa's first gift to her, smooth as river stone and etched with swirling vines. Wishes need something to hold on to. All day, Sophie carried the star in her pocket, its edges warming against her fingers as she helped Mama string garlands of dried orange slices and popcorn. She played with Theo in the yard, building tiny snow forts that toppled with peals of laughter, but her thoughts drifted like leaves on the wind. As dusk painted the sky in indigo, she returned to Elia's. The village lights winked on one by one, lanterns in windows, candles on sills, casting a golden glow over the snow. Sophie held out the wooden star. "This is Papa's wish," she said. "Can you whisper it to the wind, make it fly to him?" Again the breeze came, swirling around them like a playful sprite. Elia's pebble eyes seemed to glow, and his whisper wove through the air. "The wind carries more than words, child. It carries hearts. Speak your wish and let it go." Sophie closed her eyes, her voice trembling but true. "I wish for Papa to come home, for our family to be whole again under the Christmas stars." She tossed the wooden star into the air, watching it spin and catch the moonlight before the wind snatched it away, carrying it over the hills toward the distant city. That night, Sophie dreamed of wings made of snowflakes, soaring high above the treetops, past chimneys puffing smoke like dragon's breath, until they reached a bustling market square alive with stalls of glittering trinkets and the calls of vendors. There amid the throng stood Papa Willow, his beard dusted with frost, his arms laden with unsold carvings. A letter lay open in his pocket, its ink smudged. "I wish for a star to guide me home." And as the dream wind swirled, the wooden star tumbled into his hands, warm as a hug. Papa's eyes widened and he smiled, packing his sleigh with haste. "Home," he whispered, "by Christmas Eve." Days passed in a blur of holiday cheer. The village buzzed with preparations, children sledding down the hills, their laughter echoing like bells, elves in the bakery, or so the rumors went, piping icing onto gingerbread houses shaped like the steepled church. Sophie visited Elia's each twilight, sharing more whispers. One night she confided, "I wish Mama didn't look so tired stringing lights alone." The wind took that wish too, and the next morning, neighbors arrived with ladders and wreaths, turning the cottage into a beacon of light. Another evening, I wish Theo could see the first snowman dance. And lo, under full moon, Elia seemed to sway ever so slightly, his shadow stretching long and playful across the yard, delighting the baby at the window. But on the seventh night before Christmas, a storm rolled in from the north, fierce and unrelenting. Winds howled like wolves, snow lashed the windows in angry sheets, and the river groaned under its icy crust. The village hunkered down, fires roaring higher, stories growing taller to chase away the chill. Sophie pressed her nose to the frosted pane, her heart heavy. "The storm will keep Papa away," she cried to Mama, tears freezing on her lashes. "Our wishes were too small, the wind forgot them." Mama gathered her close, rocking her like a sapling in the gale. "Wishes aren't forgotten, my vine. They're gathering strength like roots under the snow." But Sophie slipped away as the clock struck 9, bundling against the blizzard to reach Elia's. The world was a white blur, her boots sinking deep, but she pushed on, whispering fiercely against the roar. "Elia's, the storm's too strong. Papa's wish, our wishes, they're lost." She collapsed at his base, burying her face in his scarf, which smelled faintly of pine and cinnamon. Then in the heart of the tempest, Elia's whisper rose, not soft but steady like the toll of a distant bell. "No wishes lost, Sophie Willow. They are the snowman's secret. Long ago I was built by a lonely child like you, and the wind taught me to listen. Every forgotten dream, a lost glove returned, a mended heart, a family reunited, I've carried on my breath. Your wishes, they've woven a path of light through the storm. Look up, child, see." Sophie lifted her head, and through the swirling flakes, a miracle unfolded. The clouds parted just enough for stars to peek through, but these were no ordinary stars. They formed a trail, a shimmering ribbon arcing from the city to the village, pulsing with the warmth of the wooden star's echo. And on that trail, faint but growing clearer, came the jingle of sleigh bells, not Santa's but Papa's, hitched to the village blacksmith's sturdy horse, braving the drifts. Papa Willow had followed the star in his hand, the wind at his back, his carvings bouncing in the sleigh like eager elves. The storm broke with a sigh, the wind softening to a hush as Papa's sleigh crested the hill. Sophie ran, oh how she ran, her arms outstretched, and Papa swept her up, spinning her until the world was a carousel of snow and joy. "My star guided me," he laughed, his voice rough with cold but rich with love, "and the wind whispered your name all the way." Mama and Theo waited at the door, Theo's chubby hands clapping at the sight, and the family tumbled inside, a whirlwind of hugs and tears and the sweetest reunions. That Christmas Eve, after a feast of roast goose and plum pudding, with the tree aglow and carols drifting from the phonograph, they gathered in the yard one last time. Elias stood sentinel still, his pebble eyes reflecting the stars now fully unveiled, a velvet sky unmarred by clouds. Papa carved a new ornament, a tiny snowman with a whispering mouth, and hung it on the tree. Sophie leaned close to Elias. "Your secret's safe with us," she said. "Thank you for carrying our wishes." And as the clock chimed midnight, the wind returned, gentle as a mother's kiss. Elias whispered one final time to all who would listen, "Wishes are the threads that bind the stars. Sleep now, little ones, dream deep, for tomorrow the world wakes to wonder anew." The family slipped inside, the door closing softly on the night. Fires crackled low, eyelids grew heavy, and in the quiet the snow fell once more soft, silent, secret-keeping. Sophie snuggled under her quilt, the wooden star tucked under her pillow, her dreams filled with whispers and wings. And far away, in every corner of whispering pines and beyond, other snowmen stirred, their breaths carrying new wishes into the dawn. The end. And now, dear listener, let the snowflakes of sleep drift over you. May your own wishes find their wind tonight. Sweet dreams.
Little Reindeer's Midnight Glow. Once upon a time, in a world wrapped in the softest blanket of winter, there lay the shimmering North Pole. It was a place where the snowflakes danced like tiny ballerinas, and the northern lights painted the sky in whispers of green and purple. The air smelled of pine needles and peppermint, and every evening, as the sun dipped below the frosty horizon, the reindeer herds would gather in their cozy barns, their antlers glowing faintly like branches of a Christmas tree. Among these reindeer was a little one named Lumi. She was the smallest of the herd, with fur as white as fresh fallen snow and eyes like polished chestnuts, wide and full of quiet wonder. But Lumi was shy, oh so shy. While the other reindeer pranced and played, their hooves kicking up sparkles in the snow, Lumi preferred to curl up in the corner of the barn, watching the world from behind her fluffy tail. She dreamed of great adventures, of soaring through the stars with Santa's sleigh, but her heart fluttered like a moth in a lantern whenever anyone looked her way. "You'll find your spark one day, little Lumi," her mother would say, nuzzling her gently with a nose as warm as mulled cider. "Every reindeer has a light inside, waiting for the right midnight to shine." But as Christmas Eve drew near, Lumi wondered if her light would ever come. The big night was buzzing with excitement. The elves polished the sleigh until it gleamed like a silver river, and Santa practiced his ho-ho-hos, his belly shaking like a bowl full of jelly. The reindeer, Dasher, Dancer, Prancer, Vixen, Comet, Cupid, Donner, Blitzen, and even Rudolph with his famous red nose, lined up in the harnesses, their breaths puffing out in happy clouds. Lumi watched from the shadows, her ears twitching at the laughter. She wasn't chosen for the team this year. Too small, they said kindly, too timid. So she stayed behind with the younger fawns, helping to tidy the barn and nibble on lichen treats. As the sleigh bells jingled into the distance, carrying Santa and his brave reindeer into the velvet night, Lumi sighed and settled into her bed of soft hay. The barn grew quiet, save for the gentle snoring of the fawns and the distant hoot of a snowy owl. Outside, the world was still. The moon hung low, a silver coin in the sky, casting long shadows over the endless white. But then a strange wind began to stir. It wasn't the usual crisp breeze of the pole. This was a whispering wind, soft as a sigh, carrying with it the faint echoes of children's dreams. Lost dreams, adrift from their homes, dreams of flying kites on summer days, of building sandcastles by the sea, of hugging teddy bears under warm quilts. The wind had caught them in a sudden squall earlier that evening, scattering them like dandelion seeds across the frozen tundra. Lumi's ears perked up. She lifted her head, her nose twitching. "What's that?" she murmured to herself. Peeking out the barn door, she saw them, tiny glowing orbs floating aimlessly in the air, bobbing like fireflies in a summer meadow. Each one pulsed with a soft light, blue for laughter, gold for hope, pink for love, but they were fading, growing dimmer as the wind tugged them farther from the warmth of sleeping children. "Oh no," Lumi whispered, her heart pounding like a drum in a quiet room. "Those are dreams. If they don't find their way home by dawn, the children will wake up feeling empty, like Christmas morning without presents. She glanced back at the sleeping fawns, then at the vast, starry sky. The other reindeer were far away, delivering gifts. Santa was busy. It was up to her, a little shy reindeer, to do something brave. With a deep breath that made her chest puff out just a little, Lumi stepped into the snow. It crunched softly under her hooves, like stepping on fresh wafers. The wind tugged at her fur, but she pressed on, following the drifting dreams toward the edge of the forest. The trees there were ancient pines, their branches heavy with icicles that tinkled like wind chimes. As she trotted deeper, the glow of the orbs lit her path, casting dancing shadows on the snow. The first dream she found was a small blue one, tangled in the roots of a great fir tree. It flickered weakly, whispering, "I belong to a boy named Finn, who dreams of sailing ships on stormy seas." Lumi approached slowly, her nose quivering. "Don't be afraid," she said softly, her voice barely louder than the rustle of leaves. "I'll help you home." But as she nudged it free, a gust of wind snatched it away, swirling it higher into the branches. Lumi's legs trembled. "I can't reach it," she thought, her eyes filling with icy tears. "I'm too small, too slow." She sat back on her haunches, the cold seeping into her bones, and closed her eyes. "Please," she wished silently, "let me find my spark, just this once." And then something warm bloomed inside her, like an ember in a dying fire, stirred by a gentle breath. It started in her chest, a tiny glow soft as moonlight on milk. Lumi opened her eyes and gasped. Her fur was shimmering, not a bright blaze like Rudolph's nose, but a gentle, rippling light, like the aurora borealis trapped in her coat. Blues and silvers and soft whites danced across her flanks, illuminating the snow around her in a halo of peace. "My midnight glow," she exclaimed, her voice steadier now. With newfound courage, she leaped, higher than she ever had, her hooves barely touching the ground. The glow wrapped around the blue dream like a loving embrace, getting it down from the branches and into the sky. Together, they floated upward, the wind now a friend, carrying them toward the south, where Finn slept soundly under his eiderdown. As they soared, Lumi felt the night unfold beneath her like a storybook. The world was vast and beautiful, frozen rivers snaking through valleys like silver threads, villages nestled in hills with chimneys puffing lazy smoke, and far-off mountains capped with stars. The dream orb bobbed beside her, brighter now, chattering excitedly about tall ships and salty breezes. "Thank you, little reindeer," it said. "You've given me wings." They parted ways at the edge of a cozy town, where the blue light slipped through an open window, curling into the ear of a sleeping boy with tousled hair. Lumi lingered for a moment, watching his face soften into a smile, then turned back north, her glow a little brighter, her heart a little bolder. But there were more dreams to find. The next was a golden one, heavy and sad, caught in a snowdrift near a frozen lake. "I'm Elia's hope," it murmured, the dream of a new puppy under the tree. Lumi's light melted the snow around it, and as she pulled it free, she shared a story of her own, how she once dreamed of flying but was too afraid to try. "Dreams are like that," she said gently. "They need a nudge, just like I did tonight." The golden orb perked up, and together they skimmed across the ice, the lake mirroring their light like a sheet of gold leaf. When they reached Elia's home, a little cabin with a wreath on the door, Lumi watched the dream nestle into his pillow, filling the room with the scent of warm biscuits and wagging tails. Onward Lumi went, her midnight glow leading the way through whispering woods and over sleepy meadows. She rescued a pink dream from a thicket of brambles, belonging to a girl named Mia who longed for a family sing-along by the fire. "Sing with me," the dream urged, and Lumi did, her voice a soft melody like falling snow, harmonizing with the wind until they laughed and twirled through the clouds. Then came a cluster of dreams, tangled in the branches of a willow by a bubbling brook. One was green for adventure, dreaming of exploring hidden caves, another lavender for kindness, wishing to share cookies with neighbors. Lumi's light unraveled them one by one, her glow now a beacon that drew even more lost orbs from the shadows. They formed a gentle parade, a river of light streaming behind her, each dream sharing its story as they flew. "You're a wonder, Lumi," said the green dream, "like a shooting star with hooves." But the night grew deeper, and the eastern sky hinted at the first blush of dawn. Lumi's legs ached, and her glow flickered faintly. Brave as she was still little. One dream remained, the most stubborn, a deep indigo orb, heavy with worry, snagged on the peak of a jagged cliff overlooking the sea. "I'm for little Sophia," it sighed, "who fears the dark and dreams of a lantern to light her way." The cliff was steep, the wind howling like a wolf at the moon. Lumi hesitated at the base, her breath coming in short puffs. "I can't," she thought. "It's too high, too scary." But then she remembered the faces of Finn, Elias, Mia, their smiles in sleep, and her mother's words echoed, "Every reindeer has a light inside." With a deep, steadying breath, Lumi began to climb. Her hooves found purchase in the cracks, her glow illuminating each step like a lantern on a path. The wind whipped her fur, but she sang her snow song, soft and sure, and the rocks seemed to listen, steadying under her. Halfway up, her light dimmed again, the cold biting deep. The indigo dream called down, "You're almost here. Believe in your glow." Tears froze on Lumi's lashes, but she pushed on, whispering, "For Sophia, for all the dreams." At last, she reached the top, her chest heaving, and wrapped her light around the orb. It was heavier than the others, weighted with fears, but as they descended together, gliding on a cushion of shimmering air, Lumi poured her warmth into it. "The dark isn't empty," she said. "It's full of possibilities, waiting for light like yours." They soared over the crashing waves, the sea a black mirror flecked with foam, until they found Sophia's lighthouse home. The indigo dream slipped inside, and in the beam of the great lamp, it bloomed into 1,000 tiny stars, chasing shadows from the girl's room. Sophia stirred, murmuring, "My lantern, it's here." Dawn was breaking now, painting the sky in pinks and golds. Lumi turned homeward, her parade of dreams trailing like a comet's tail, each one winking goodbye before vanishing to their beds. She was tired, oh so tired, her glow fading to a soft ember. But as she crested the final hill and saw the North Pole barn aglow with morning light, joy bubbled in her like hot cocoa. The sleigh had returned while she was away. Santa stood at the door, his eyes twinkling like the stars she'd flown among. The other reindeer clustered around, their noses curious. "Lumi," Rudolph called, "where have you been? We missed you on the run." Blushing under her dimming fur, Lumi told her tale, the lost dreams, the midnight flight, the glow that bloomed from shyness. The herd listened in awe, their antlers casting long shadows in the rising sun. "You saved Christmas in a way we never could," Santa said, his voice rumbling like distant thunder wrapped in velvet. He knelt, yes, even Santa knelt, and placed a gentle hand on her head. "Your light isn't for pulling sleighs, little one. It's for getting the gentle things, the whispers of the heart." From that Christmas Eve on, Lumi was no longer just the shy reindeer in the corner. Every year, when the wind carried faint echoes of dreams, she would slip out into the night, her midnight glow a secret gift to the world. The other reindeer made room for her stories by the fire, and the fawns snuggled close, their eyes wide with wonder. And as the North Pole settled into peaceful slumber, under a sky stitched with stars, Lumi curled up in her hay, her chest warm with the memory of flight. The snow fell softly outside, blanketing the world in hush, and in every child's dream that night, a little reindeer shone, reminding them that even the smallest light can chase away the dark. Sweet dreams, little ones. May your own glow light the way. Good night.
Frosty's Forgotten Holly. Once upon a time, in the heart of the Whispering Woods, where the pine trees stood tall like ancient guardians draped in silver frost, there lived a little elf named Alara. Alara was not like the other elves of the North Pole workshop, who bustled about with their rosy cheeks and twinkling bells, wrapping gifts and polishing sleigh runners. No, Alara was the quiet one, the dreamer with silver hair that curled like fresh fallen snow and eyes as blue as the first winter sky. She had a special job, tending to the holly groves, those magical clusters of evergreen leaves and ruby-red berries that brought the spark of joy to every Christmas wreath. Holly, you see, wasn't just any plant. It was the heartbeat of the holiday season, a symbol of hope that bloomed even in the deepest freeze. Each berry held a tiny wish, whispered by children around the world, for laughter with family, for warmth on chilly nights, for the soft glow of candles in the window. Elara's days were spent singing lullabies to the branches, coaxing the berries to ripen under the pale winter sun. "Grow bright, little dears," she'd murmur, her voice like the chime of distant sleigh bells. "The world needs your fire tonight." But this year, as the first snowflakes of December danced from the heavens like forgotten promises, something went terribly awry. It was the night before the great wrapping, when Santa's elves would adorn every package with a sprig of holly to seal the magic inside. Elara had harvested basket after basket, her small hands careful not to bruise a single leaf. Yet, as she laid out the final sprigs in the workshop's grand hall, she noticed it. One berry was missing. Not just any berry, but the one from the heart of the oldest holly tree, Frosty. This berry was special, larger than the rest, its red so deep it seemed to pulse with the light of 1,000 stars. Frosty had guarded it for 100 winters, whispering secrets of resilience to the winds. "Oh no," Elara gasped, her breath fogging the frosty air. The other elves chattered on, too busy with ribbons and bows to notice. But Elara knew the truth. Without that berry, the wreaths would lack their full magic. Gifts might arrive wrapped in cheer, but the deepest wishes, the ones for quiet comfort on lonely nights, would fade like echoes in the snow. "I must find it," she declared to the empty hall, her voice steady despite the flutter in her chest. "Before the moon rises high and the sleigh takes flight." Bundling into her woolen cloak, embroidered with silver threads that shimmered like moonlight, Elara slipped out into the whispering woods. The forest was alive with winter's hush. Branches creaked softly under their blanket of snow, and the air hummed with the distant song of owls. Fireflies, no, wait, snowflies, tiny motes of light that elves believed were the souls of old Christmases past, flickered along the path, guiding her deeper into the trees. The wind tugged at her hood, carrying whispers, lost, forgotten. Seek the heart. Elara's tiny boots crunched over the frozen ground, leaving prints like stars in the snow. She called out, "Frosty, where has your holly gone?" But the trees only swayed, their needles rustling secrets they wouldn't share. Hours passed, or was it minutes? In the woods, time twisted like vines. The cold nipped at her cheeks, turning them pink as rose petals, and doubt crept in like shadows at dusk. What if it's truly lost? She wondered aloud. What if I failed the season? Just then, a soft glow appeared ahead, a lantern swinging from a low branch, casting pools of golden light on the snow. Beneath it sat a peculiar creature, a fox with fur as white as fresh cream, its tail tipped in emerald green. This was Lumi, the fox of forgotten things, guardian of what the world had let slip away, lost mittens, half-remembered songs, and yes, even wayward berries. "Who ventures so deep on such a night?" Lumi asked, his voice a velvet purr, eyes gleaming like polished chestnuts. Elara curtsied low, her cloak pooling around her like a fallen cloud. "I am Elara, tender of the holly groves. I've come for Frosty's forgotten berry. The wreaths await, and without it, the magic dims." Lumi tilted his head, ears twitching. "Ah, the red heart of winter. Many seek, few find, but quests are not walked alone." With a flick of his tail, he conjured a path of glowing paw prints, leading into a thicket where the trees grew wild and tangled. "Follow, little elf, but heed. The forest tests the seeker. It asks not for speed, but for sight." Grateful, Elara trailed after him. The path wound through a meadow of ice flowers, delicate blooms that unfurled petals of crystal, singing tiny melodies as the wind passed. But soon, the way grew thorny. Brambles, twisted like grumpy old uncles, barred the trail, their spines glinting like needles. "Ouch!" Elara yelped as one snagged her sleeve, drawing a bead of blood that froze into a ruby droplet. Lumi paused, nosing the bramble gently. "These are the thorns of regret," he explained. "They guard the forgotten by pricking the heart. What do you regret, Alara, that makes you falter?" Alara knelt, her fingers tracing the frozen drop on her sleeve. Tears welled in her eyes, not from pain, but memory. "I regret the winters I spent hidden in the workshop, too shy to share my songs with the other elves. I thought my voice too small, my dreams too quiet. And now, with this berry lost, perhaps I've always been forgetting the joy right in front of me." The fox's eyes softened. "Regret is a heavy cloak, but speak it true, and the thorns part." Alara sang then, a soft, trembling lullaby about a snowflake's journey home. The words wove through the air like threads of light, and the brambles quivered, then withdrew, petals of frost blooming in their wake. The path cleared, and they pressed on, Alara's heart lighter, her steps surer. Deeper still, the forest whispered of wonders. They crossed the river of echoes, where waters ran clear as glass but murmured the voices of past holidays. Laughter from feasts long ended, the crackle of Yule logs, the sigh of a child unwrapping a longed-for toy. "Listen closely," Lumi advised. "The river holds clues to what is lost." Alara cupped her hands to the water, and there it was, a ripple of red, faint as a dream. The berry, it floated here, carried by the melt of some distant thaw. But as she reached, the current swirled, pulling the vision away. "It's gone again." "Not gone," Lumi said with a wise nod. "Redirected, the river teaches patience. What echoes call to you, elf?" Kneeling by the bank, Alara closed her eyes. Amid the chorus, she heard her own voice, younger from her first winter in the groves. "Sing louder, Alara, the holly listens." And woven in was another, a child's wish, soft and clear. "I want Mama to smile again, even in the cold." It was the wish bound to Frosty's berry. Carried on the wind from a far-off cottage, where a family huddled by a dim fire. With newfound resolve, Alara hummed along with the river, harmonizing until the waters calmed. A single ripple returned, depositing a clue on the bank, a single holly leaf, veined with silver, pointing downstream. "To the Heart Grove," Lumi confirmed, "where all forgotten things converge." The journey grew colder now, the stars wheeling overhead like a canopy of diamonds. Snow began to fall in earnest, fat flakes that muffled the world into a blanket of peace. Alara's cloak grew heavy with it, and weariness tugged at her eyelids. "How much farther?" she whispered, her breath a puff of cloud. "As far as your heart leads," Lumi replied, but his form began to shimmer, fading like mist at dawn. "I've guided you past regret and echo. Now face the frost alone. Remember, warmth is not in the finding, but in the sharing." And with that, the fox vanished, leaving only the glow of his lantern swinging gently, a beacon in the storm. Alara trudged on, the snow rising to her knees, each step a soft crump that echoed her heartbeat. The forest thickened into the Heart Grove, a sacred circle where the oldest trees stood sentinel, oaks with bark like wrinkled faces, firs heavy with memory. At the center loomed Frosty himself, not a snowman as some tailies might whimsy, but the ancient holly tree, his trunk gnarled and wise, branches reaching like open arms. Icicles hung from his limbs like tears, and at his base lay a hollow, cradling. Nothing. The berry was gone. "No," Alara cried, sinking to her knees. The snow swirled around her, burying her sorrow. "I've come so far only to fail." She pressed her forehead to the cold earth, and in that moment of despair, the grove seemed to sigh. The wind died, the flakes slowed, and Frosty's branches rustled, not in anger, but invitation. "Look closer, child," a voice echoed, deep as roots in the soil. It was Frosty himself speaking through the hush. "What is forgotten is never truly lost. It waits to be remembered." Alara lifted her head, and there, nestled in a crook of root, not red but glowing softly, was the berry. No, it wasn't the berry at all. It was a mirror of ice, reflecting her own tear-streaked face, and within it the truth unfolded like a blooming flower. She saw the journey backward, the thorn's prick revealing her shyness, the river's echo unveiling the child's wish. And deeper still, visions cascaded. The berry hadn't been lost by accident. In the harvest haste, Alara had overlooked it, too focused on perfection to notice the quiet plea it held. But in seeking it, she had gathered something greater, the thread of connection, weaving elf to tree, wish to heart. The magic isn't in the berry alone, Alara realized, her voice steady now. It's in carrying it forward. With trembling fingers, she plucked a fresh berry from Frosty's lowest branch, small but vibrant, pulsing with the same ancient light. It was enough, more than enough. For in her quest, she had infused it with her own warmth. The song of overcoming regret, the harmony of shared echoes. As dawn's first blush painted the sky in pinks and golds, Alara returned to the workshop, the berry cradled in her palm like a captured sunrise. The elves, bleary-eyed from the night's labors, gasped as she placed it atop the grand wreath for Santa's sleigh. "Where have you been?" they chorused. "In the woods," Alara smiled, her eyes sparkling. "Learning that forgotten things find their way home when we seek with open hearts." That Christmas Eve, as the sleigh soared across the starlit world, the hollies glow-lit every rooftop. In a distant cottage, a mother smiled for the first time in moons, drawing her child close by the fire. And far away in the whispering woods, Frosty stood taller, his branches whispering thanks to the wind. Alara, tucked into her bed of pine needles and down, watched snowflakes drift past her window. The world outside was still, wrapped in winter's gentle embrace. "Sleep now, little dreams," she murmured to the night. "Tomorrow brings new light, new songs, new joys to share." And as the moon climbed high, tucking the forest into bed, Alara drifted off, her heart full as a berry in bloom. For in the quiet of the season, she knew, the greatest magic is the warmth we give away. The end.
The Candy Cane Quest. Once upon a time, in a shimmering world where the ground was made of soft peppermint swirls and the sky twinkled with sugar crystal stars, there lived a little elf named Twinkle. Twinkle wasn't your ordinary elf. No, she didn't spend her days wrapping presents or baking gingerbread. Instead, she dreamed of grand adventures in the hidden corners of Candyland, where rivers of chocolate flowed lazy and slow, and mountains of marshmallows puffed up like fluffy white clouds. Twinkle had curly hair the color of strawberry taffy, eyes like shiny gumdrops, and a backpack stuffed with licorice ropes and lemon drops for luck. But on this particular frosty evening, as the first snowflakes of winter began to dance like tiny vanilla wafers from the sky, Twinkle felt a tug in her heart. It was the season of the great sweet share, when all the creatures of Candyland gathered to exchange treats and stories under the glow of the enormous lollipop lantern. Yet something was missing. The oldest and wisest tree in the forest, a towering gumdrop oak named Grandpa Gummy, whispered a secret to Twinkle as she passed by on her way home from berry picking. "Child," Grandpa Gummy rumbled, his bark crackling like caramel brittle, "the heart of our holiday joy is fading. The golden candy cane, the one that sparkles with eternal magic, has vanished from the crystal cavern. Without it, our sweets will lose their sparkle, our laughs their fizz, and the world will turn as dull as plain old rock candy." His leaves, shaped like green jelly leaves, shivered in the breeze. Only a brave soul with a pure heart can embark on the candy cane quest to retrieve it. "Will you go, Twinkle?" Twinkle's gumdrop eyes widened. The golden candy cane, she'd heard legends of it, a striped wonder, red and white like a sunrise over raspberry fields, said to hold the power to make every treat in Candyland taste twice as sweet and fill every heart with twice the warmth. It was no small task. The quest would take her through the whispering woods, across the fizzy falls, over the marshmallow mountains, and into the shadowy depths of the licorice labyrinth. Dangers lurked. Grumpy gumdrop goblins who hoarded their chews, slippery chocolate rivers that could sweep you away to the toffee tundra, and worst of all, the frosty fog that made you forget why you set out in the first place. But Twinkle was no stranger to a little mischief. "I'll do it, Grandpa Gummy," she declared, puffing out her chest like a proud puff pastry. "For Candyland and for the smiles of all my friends." She packed her backpack with extra jelly beans for energy, a map drawn on wafer-thin parchment, and a tiny lantern fueled by firefly fizz. As the moon rose like a giant marshmallow, casting a silvery glow over the peppermint paths, Twinkle set off, her tiny boots crunching softly on the frosted ground. Her first challenge came sooner than expected, the Whispering Woods. The trees here were tall and twisty, their branches woven from woven licorice vines that murmured secrets as you passed. "Turn back," they hissed like fizzy soda pops. "The path is lost. The cane is cursed." Twinkle clutched her map, but the whispers grew louder, tangling her thoughts like knotted taffy. Just when she felt her knees wobble like unset jello, a soft rustle caught her ear. Out from behind a butterscotch bush hopped Sprinkles, a fluffy bunny with fur as white as coconut shavings and ears dotted with rainbow sprinkles. "Twinkle, what are you doing out here alone?" Sprinkles asked, his nose twitching like a twitchy licorice whip. Twinkle explained the quest, her voice barely above a whisper. Sprinkles' eyes sparkled. "A quest, count me in, I know these woods like the back of my paw. The trees only whisper nonsense to those who listen too hard. Come on, follow my hops." Together they danced through the woods, Sprinkles leading with bouncy leaps that scattered glittery trails. He taught Twinkle to hum a tune, an old elf melody about chocolate rivers and cherry pies, to drown out the whispers. By the time they emerged on the other side, the sun was peeking over the horizon like a shy orange slice, and Twinkle felt braver. "Thank you, friend," she said, sharing a jelly bean. Sprinkles grinned. "Adventures are better with buddies. What's next?" The fizzy falls awaited, a cascading waterfall of sparkling root beer that foamed and bubbled like 1,000 shaken soda bottles. To cross, they had to ride the foam rafts, but the falls were wild that day, splashing with extra fizz from a recent storm of sour patches. Twinkle and Sprinkles built a raft from woven pretzel twigs and a sail of stretched fruit leather, but as they launched, a massive wave tossed them like popcorn in a hot kettle. "Hold on." Sprinkles yelped, his ears flapping like sails in the wind. Down they tumbled, swirling through bubbles that tickled their noses and popped with giggles. Twinkle's backpack flew open, spilling lemon drops that turned the water even fizzier, creating a whirlpool of citrusy chaos. Just as they thought they'd be swept forever, a deep voice boomed from the mist. "Who dares disturb my peaceful paw?" It was Bubbles the beaver, guardian of the falls, with a tail flat as a flapjack and teeth sharp enough to gnaw through toffee logs. Twinkle, sputtering and soaked, explained her quest. Bubbles' eyes narrowed like squeezed limes. "Many have come for treasures, but few respect the flow. Prove your worth, catch me a fizzfish from the rapids, and I'll calm the waters for your crossing." Fizzfish was sly, darting like silver minnows through the foam, impossible to grab with paws or hands. But Twinkle had an idea. She tied a licorice rope to a lemon drop as bait, and with Sprinkles distracting the fish with hops and hops of distraction, she scooped one up in her tiny elf net made from spider silk cotton candy. Impressed, Bubbles nodded. "Clever ones you are, the golden cane calls to hearts like yours." With a mighty slap of his tail, he smoothed the falls into a gentle slide like a slip-end slide of sparkling soda. They whooshed down laughing, landing in a pool of fizzy foam that left them giggling and refreshed. As thanks, Bubbles gifted them a vial of calm water essence. "For the foggy times ahead," he said wisely. Twinkle hugged him tight, her clothes still dripping but her spirits soaring. Onward they trekked to the Marshmallow Mountains, where peaks rose like giant pillows, soft and white but riddled with hidden crevices that could swallow you whole. The air here was thick with the scent of vanilla, and the wind sang lullabies that made your eyelids heavy. Climbing was no easy feat. Each step sank like into a featherbed, and soon Twinkle's legs ached like overworked dough. Sprinkles, ever the optimist, bounced ahead, but even he grew weary, his sprinkles dimming like faded confetti. That's when they met Puff the mountain goat. A shaggy fellow with horns curled like cinnamon rolls and hooves that gripped marshmallows like magic. Puff was perched on a ledge, munching thoughtfully on a cloud of spun sugar. Lost climbers, he bleated, his voice warm as fresh-baked cookies. Twinkle shared their tale and Puff's eyes lit up. The candy cane quest. Legends say it tests not just strength but sweetness of spirit. I've guarded these peaks for ages, but even I can't reach the highest spire alone. Join me and we'll summit together. With Puff's sure-footed guidance, they traversed the tricky trails. He showed them secret paths woven through the fluff, where wild licorice vines grew like ropes for pulling each other up. When a sudden snow squall of powdered sugar blinded them, Puff used his horns to carve a shelter, and Twinkle shared stories of Candyland feasts to keep their spirits high. Sprinkles added jokes that had them rolling, literally tumbling down a soft slope in fits of laughter. By nightfall, they reached the summit, where the stars tasted like pinches of stardust on their tongues. From there, they could see the dark entrance to the licorice labyrinth below, twisting like a blackberry bramble in the moonlight. "You're true friends," Puff said, nuzzling them goodbye. "The cane will know you've earned it." He gifted them a fluff of eternal marshmallow for soft landings ahead. Descending was easier with full hearts, and as dawn broke, painting the mountains in hues of peach cobbler, Twinkle felt the quest's magic weaving tighter around them. But the licorice labyrinth was the true test, a maze of twisted black ropes, some sweet and chewy, others sour and snapping like whips. Shadows danced like mischievous ghosts, and echoes mocked your every step. "This way, no that way, you're lost forever," they taunted. Armed with Bubble's calm water vial, Twinkle sprinkled drops to soothe the snapping vines, but the fog rolled in thick as molasses, clouding their minds. Memories flickered. Twinkle forgot Sprinkle's name, Sprinkles forgot the map, and even Puff's gift seemed like a dream. In the heart of the haze, a figure emerged, Slither the serpent, sleek as black licorice and scales shimmering with deceptive dew. "Why quest for gold when darkness is cozy?" he hissed, his voice smooth as silk fudge. "Stay here, forget your worries, and feast on endless night." His eyes glowed like forbidden cherries, pulling them deeper into doubt. Twinkle's hand trembled on her lantern, the firefly fizz flickering low. But then a whisper, not from the maze but from within. For Candyland, for friends. It was the tune from the woods, the laughter from the falls, the stories from the mountains. Twinkle hummed it loud, and Sprinkles joined with hops, their rhythm cutting the fog like a hot knife through butter. Puff's marshmallow fluff glowed softly in her pack, a beacon of warmth. Together they faced Slither. "We choose light," Twinkle said firmly, "because sweetness shared is the greatest magic." Slither recoiled, hissing as the fog lifted like a curtain at the end of a show. The path cleared, revealing the crystal cavern's glittering mouth. But wait, Slither wasn't all bad. Chastened, he bowed low. "You've bested the shadow with song and solidarity. Take this shadow thread, it will bind what tries to break." A silky black ribbon, soft now, not snapping. Into the cavern they ventured, walls sparkling with quartz candies and floors of polished rock sugar. Deeper still, past stalactites dripping honeydew, they found it. The golden candy cane, perched on a pedestal of pralines, guarded by a final trial. A riddle from the cavern's echo spirit. What is striped with joy, bent with grace, holds winter's warmth in every taste. It guides the lost, sweetens the sour, and in shared bites grants endless hour. Twinkle thought hard, her friends close. "The candy cane," she cried. The pedestal hummed, and the cane floated gently into her hands, warm, sparkling, alive with stripes that swirled like auroras. But oh, the return! With the cane's magic, the world bloomed anew. The labyrinth untangled into a highway of harmony, the mountains softened into slides of joy, the falls sang symphonies of sparkle, and the woods whispered welcomes. Back in Candyland, under the lollipop lantern, Twinkle placed the cane in Grandpa Gummy's branches. Sweets fizzed brighter, laughs echoed louder, and every creature, from tiny ants with sugar coats to birds with caramel wings, gathered for the great sweet share. Twinkle, Sprinkles, Puff, Bubbles, and even a reformed Slither feasted till their bellies ached with happiness. "The real treasure," Twinkle said, hugging her friends, "was the quest that brought us together." As the stars winked goodnight and the snowflakes settled like blankets of bliss, Candyland dreamed sweetly. And Twinkle, tucked in her peppermint bed, new adventures would call again. But for now, sleep wrapped her like the warmest toffee hug. The end, sweet dreams, little wanderer. May your quests be filled with friends and fears.
Under the gingerbread moon. Once upon a time, in a cozy little house nestled at the edge of a snow-dusted village, there lived a girl named Leela. She was 7 years old, with curly hair like cinnamon twists and eyes that sparkled like fresh-fallen sugar. Christmas Eve had arrived, wrapping the world in a hush of twinkling lights and the faint jingle of distant bells. But Leela couldn't sleep. The stockings hung heavy with anticipation by the fireplace, and the tree in the corner whispered secrets in the glow of its ornaments. She tossed and turned in her bed, her fluffy quilt pulling her this way and that, until finally she slipped out from under the covers and padded to the window. Outside, the night was a canvas of velvet black, painted with the soft brushstrokes of stars. And there, hanging low in the sky like a lantern baked just for her, was the moon. But this was no ordinary moon. Tonight, it gleamed with a warm, golden-brown hue, crinkled at the edges like the top of a gingerbread house, fresh from the oven. Wisps of steam seemed to curl from its surface, carrying the scent of molasses and cloves right through the frosted glass. Leela pressed her nose to the pane, her breath fogging it up in little clouds. "Oh," she whispered, "it's a gingerbread moon." As she watched, the moon seemed to wink at her, a slow, sugary blink that made the world tilt ever so gently. Leela's eyelids grew heavy, not with sleep, but with wonder. She climbed back into bed, pulling the quilt up to her chin, and let her gaze linger on that delectable orb. The room filled with a soft, spicy aroma, like her grandmother's kitchen on baking day. And before she knew it, the gingerbread moon reached down with invisible threads of moonlight, wrapping around her like a warm apron, and drew her into a dream so sweet it tasted like home. When Leela opened her eyes, or perhaps she never closed them at all, she found herself standing in a vast, glittering field that stretched as far as the imagination could wander. The ground beneath her feet was a vast expanse of rolled-out dough, soft and yielding, dusted with powdered sugar snow. Towering gumdrop trees lined the horizon, their branches heavy with peppermint leaves that rustled like candy wrappers in a gentle breeze. Rivers of warm caramel wound through the landscape, bubbling lazily and filling the air with a toffee-sweet hum. And overhead, the gingerbread moon smiled down, closer now, its craters like raisins baked into a cosmic cookie, casting a honeyed light over everything. "Welcome, little baker," came a voice as crumbly as shortbread. Leela turned to see a gingerbread man, no taller than her knee, hopping toward her on licorice legs. He had button eyes that gleamed like chocolate chips, and a smile frosted with white icing. A red cinnamon heart peeked from the center of his chest, pulsing faintly with warmth. "I'm Jingy," he said, tipping an invisible hat made of spun sugar. "And you've arrived just in time for the great baking under the moon." Leela blinked, her bare feet sinking into the doughy earth. She was still in her nightgown, but it felt different here, stitched with threads of tinsel and embroidered with tiny candy cane buttons. "The great baking," she echoed, her voice echoing softly, like a spoon tapping a mixing bowl. "Oh yes," Jingy clapped his tiny hands, sending a sprinkle of nutmeg into the air. "Every Christmas Eve, when the gingerbread moon rises full and fragrant, we gather to bake the memory loaf. It's no ordinary bread, mind you. Each slice holds a memory, a laugh shared with a friend, a hug from someone far away, the first snowflake on your tongue. But tonight, oh dear," his icing smile drooped just a smidge. "We've run out of the most important ingredient, the spark of wonder. Without it, our loaf will be flat and forgettable, like a cookie without soul." Leela's heart gave a little flip, like dough rising in a warm oven. She thought of her own wonders, the way her grandmother's stories made the fire dance, or how the Christmas lights turned the living room into a fairy tale. I think I have some wonder," she said shyly. "Can I help?" Jingy's eyes lit up brighter than a Yule log. "A dreamer from the waking world? Perfect. Come, we'll need the whole village." And with that, he took her hand, his palm surprisingly warm and not at all sticky, and led her across the sugary fields. As they journeyed, the dreamscape unfolded like a pop-up book of delights. They crossed a bridge of woven pretzels, sturdy yet salty sweet, where trollish marshmallows guarded the way with fluffy grins. "Pass if ye bring joy," one bellowed in a voice like popping corn. Leela giggled and tossed them each a handful of imaginary snowflakes, which melted into laughter on their pillowy cheeks. Further on, they entered the candy cane forest, where the trees were striped red and white, curving into arches that framed the gingerbread moon like a picture window. Elves with ears like twisted peppermints scampered about, harvesting hooks of licorice vines. One elf, with freckles like sesame seeds, paused her work to wave. "Oi, Jingy, who's the new apprentice?" "This here's Leela," Jingy announced proudly. "She's got waking world sparkles in her eyes." The elf squinted, then nodded. "Aye, she does, but mind the whimsy woods ahead, full of tricksy treats that might lead ye astray with their giggles." Leela's tummy fluttered with excitement and a touch of nerves. The whimsy woods loomed next, a thicket of cotton candy clouds that drifted low enough to brush your hair, and lollipop flowers that bloomed in every color, whispering silly rhymes as you passed. "Step light, or ye'll sink into fluff," Jingy warned, but Leela couldn't help twirling as a cloud tickled her toes, sending her into a fit of laughter that turned the flowers' petals into fireworks of fizz. At the heart of the woods stood the gingerbread village, a cluster of houses with gumdrop roofs and window panes of translucent lemon drops. Chimneys puffed vanilla-scented smoke, and doors creaked open on hinges of toffee. Villagers bustled about, shortbread squirrels chattered recipes from the rooftops, marzipan mice scurried with thimbles of yeast, and a grand old walnut-crusted owl perched on the bakery steeple, hooting measurements in ounces and pinches. The village square was dominated by the great oven, a colossal stone hearth carved from molasses bricks, its mouth aglow with the friendly flicker of orange zest flames. Around it, a crowd had gathered, bakers of every shape and size, from jelly-bean jugglers to fudge-fingered fiddlers. At the center stood Myra, the head baker, a robust woman made entirely of braided challah dough, her arms rolled like sleeves and her hair a crown of braided raisins. She wore an apron stitched with constellations of cloves, and her voice boomed like a rolling pin on a board. "Fellow bakers," Myra called, her doughy hands kneading the air, "the moon is at its ripest. The dough is proofed and plump, but alas, no spark of wonder. Our memory loaf will crumble to crumbs without it." A murmur rippled through the crowd, like sugar dissolving in tea. Leela stepped forward, her nightgown swishing against the doughy ground. I can help," she said, her voice small but steady, like the first bubble in rising batter. "Back in my world, wonder is everywhere. It's in the way snowflakes stick to your lashes, or how a song can make your heart feel full." Myra's raisin eyes softened, crinkling like warm pastry. "A waking child, then you shall be our spark bearer. But beware, the spark isn't found in pantries or pots. It hides in the quiet corners of the heart, baked from stories untold." And so the quest began. Jingy and Leela, with a band of merry bakers, Myra herself, the peppermint elf named Pip, and a chorus of cookie carolers, set off into the moonlit meadows. Their path wound through the spice swamps, where cinnamon reeds whispered riddles. "What's sweet but never cloying, warm but never burning?" Leela pondered, then smiled. "A memory," the reeds parted, revealing a hidden grove of star anise blooms that glowed like captured fireflies. Next, they climbed the Meringue Mountains, peaks whipped high and light as a sigh. The wind up there howled with peppermint breath, threatening to whisk them away like forgotten meringues. Pip the elf fashioned lassos from licorice whips, and Leela recalled a memory of her own. The time she and her brother built a fort from blankets and flashlight beams, turning their room into a castle of shadows and secrets. "Hold on to what you love," she told her companions, and her words wove a safety net of golden thread, catching them gently as they crested the final peak. From the summit, they spied the spark, a shimmering ember hovering over the fudge falls, where chocolate rivers cascaded into pools of molten dreams. But guarding it was the grumble gremlin, a lumpy creature of burnt edges and sourdough, his belly a cavern of regrets. "No baking for you," he snarled, his voice like overbaked crust. "Wonders are for the bold, not the weary. I've hoarded every forgotten wish, stale Christmases, lost mittens, half-remembered songs, begone." The bakers faltered, the gremlin's shadow stretching long under the gingerbread moon. Leela felt a pang in her chest, like dough that's been punched down too hard. She thought of her own small worries, the fear that tomorrow's gifts might not sparkle as bright, or that the magic of the season might fade like morning frost. But then Jingy squeezed her hand. "Remember, little baker, the spark isn't stolen, it's shared." Drawing a deep breath scented with moonlit cloves, Leela stepped forward. "Mr. Gremlin," she said softly, not with fear but with the kindness of fresh icing, "those wishes you're keeping, they're heavy, aren't they? Like dough without enough flour. What if we baked them into something new? Let me tell you a story." And she did. She spoke of her grandmother's kitchen, where flour dusted the air like snow, and every batch of cookies held a tale of sledding down hills that weren't there, or stars that sang lullabies. She spoke of the brother who teased, but always shared his cocoa, and the quiet joy of wrapping presents with ribbons that whispered, "I love you." As her words flowed, warm and steady, the gremlin's scowl softened. His burnt edges flaked away, revealing a softer center of risen hope. One by one, he released the wishes, tiny orbs of light that floated up like yeast bubbles, merging with Leela's story into a radiant spark of wonder, vast and glowing as the moon itself. With cheers from the bakers, they hurried back to the village, the spark cupped in Myra's braided hands like a precious egg. The great oven roared in welcome as they poured it into the waiting dough, a mountain of flour, butter, and secrets, kneaded with laughter and folded with care. The cookie carolers sang ancient tunes of nutmeg and night, their voices harmonizing with the pop and crackle of the flames. Leela dusted the top with constellations of sugar stars, her fingers leaving prints of pure delight. Hours passed, or perhaps only heartbeats, as the memory loaf rose, golden and grand, filling the village with an aroma that wrapped around you like a hug. When it was done, they sliced it carefully, each piece revealing swirls of color, crimson for courage, azure for dreams, emerald for the green of evergreen hope. The villagers gathered in the square, passing slices under the gingerbread moon. A shortbread squirrel relived the crunch of acorns in autumn play. Pip the elf tasted the twist of his first candy cane dance. Even the grumble gremlin, now a reformed rumple sprite with a sprinkly smile, savored a bite that mended his sour heart. Leela took the last slice, and oh, what flavors bloomed on her tongue. There was the tang of her grandmother's lemon bars, the spice of family feasts, the quiet sweetness of snow-kissed silence. Memories from every baker mingled with her own, baking new ones in their warmth, a tapestry of shared wonders that stretched from the village to the stars. As the moon began its slow descent, painting the sky with strokes of dawn rose icing, the dream began to soften at the edges. Jingy walked Leela to the meadow's rim, where the powdered sugar snow met the veil of sleep. "Thank you, spark bearer," he said, his cinnamon heart glowing. "You've made this Christmas loaf eternal. Carry a crumb in your pocket, and it'll warm you always." Leela hugged him tight, careful not to crumble his edges, and felt the moonlight threads tugging her home. The village waved goodbye with flour-dusted hands, the oven's glow fading like embers in a hearth. She drifted upward, through clouds of cotton candy and rivers of caramel, until the scent of cloves mingled with the pine of her Christmas tree. When her eyes fluttered open in her own bed, the room was still, save for the soft tick of the clock and the whisper of wind against the window. The gingerbread moon had paled to silver, but its magic lingered, a faint spice on the air, a warmth in her cheeks. Leela smiled, pulling the quilt higher, and in her mind's eye, she could still taste the memory loaf. Tomorrow, she knew, she'd wake to gifts and laughter, but tonight she carried the sweetest present, the knowledge that wonder wasn't something to chase, but to bake, one story at a time. And as the stars tucked themselves in one by one, Leela closed her eyes, dreaming of dough that rose forever under a moon made just for her. Sweet dreams, little baker. The night is yours to savor. The end, Christmas tree.